Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time of day you've chosen to join us, I thank you. I'm your host, Adam Gerard, and welcome to A Word with Adam. My guest today is announcer extraordinaire, Josh Armour. Josh, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
How are you today, Josh?
Great. It's nice to be having somebody ask me the questions instead of actually doing the asking.
Yeah, it's a weird side. I'm
turning the tables on me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing yours when I get from the flip side and sit there and be like, whoa,
That's
left
right.
ball, you son of a bitch. But anyway, Josh.
Yes.
Let's start off right from the bat. I know that you have been a wrestling fan since you were a young kid.
Mm-hmm.
Let's rip the band-aid right off. How to start.
All right. I can never remember which happened first, whether it was the videotapes, like renting them, or it was finding these magazines. But long story short, my old man was very good mates with the fellow who ran the newsagent's shop near our place when I was a kid. So, of course, at the end of the month, they have all the magazines they can't sell, and they rip the covers off, and they're just, unless they get the credit back for them, like they do with newspapers and whatnot, it was just, who wants these magazines that we can't sell? And there was about half a dozen WWF magazine like copies of that over the span of a couple of months. So I started looking at that, and then of course you see all the merchandise catalogues, and then you get all jealous, going, oh my god, shipping and postage is going to cost a fortune. We can't afford this. So that was cool, just seeing that, having that in your hand to be able to flip through these photos and articles. And then the video shop near us at Pasadena had, from about 1989 to 92, they had everything. So all the compilations and the pay-per-views and all that stuff. And it was either, I think there was like 3 tapes that I rented at first, which was WrestleMania 5.
Yep.
With the Mega Powers exploding. WrestleMania 7.
Yep, not bad.
So more Hulkamania. And I think maybe like a Survivor Series or Rumble or something like that.
You can't go wrong with a Rumble.
Oh, it's when you're a kid especially.
It's the best. It's like we were talking about this off there earlier. How many times you get to see possibly just 30 dudes? You're like, look at all these guys in there at once.
And as a fan, it's great because you have the potential at some point during the match to have a dozen or more of some of your favourites in there at once. So I'm seeing the Texas Tornado, and I'm seeing Shawn Michaels, and I'm seeing then Hulk Hogan coming out, and Ultimate Warriors, people like that. That was a huge attraction, was the Rumble. So so I fell in love with it from the get-go. I was maybe 8 years old, 9 years old, and from then on I had to see then every new videotape, every new VHS, every new WWF magazine, which magazines were a lot cheaper back in the day.
I remember, they were good.
Oh yeah, it was $3 or $4, and you'd be able to sit there and read all this kayfabe. And of course, when I'm a kid, I don't know that it's put on, that it's a show, even until I was, until it was about 13, 14, when the McMahon stuff, Austin stuff really started to heat up, and you're like, I don't think this is fair income,
Yeah, I don't think you can get away with hitting your boss that many times and still have your job. Something's not adding up here, Steve.
It's a bit full on, but okay, we'll go with it, And so I just wanted to sort of believe in it, and really, it's one of those things where you think, well, what got me into it? What really attracted me?
Yep.
And I think it was just the fact that it was presented as a sport, that is a competition. And when I was a kid, I loved all kinds of sport. Now I rarely watch sport, but back then I loved everything, cricket even. So, sorry, any cricket fans out there, but it's just not for me these days. So
unless it's covered in barbed wire, crackerjack style.
Yeah, that's the crackerjack style. That's the kind of cricket game I go for.
I'm down with that. Yeah.
6 and out. So, I was so taken aback by, I guess, there's people that I could look up to and believe in, especially someone like Bret Hart. He was my go-to. Once Hulk Hogan left WWF, I was the big Hulkamaniac. And the USA can do no wrong, you know what I mean? It was that kind of thing. You drink the Kool-Aid. And then when Bret came...
The Hulkamania-aid, sorry.
Hulka-aid, yes. I was just completely in love with it from the
get-go.
From the get-go. And it was sort of you sit there and you play with your wrestling figurines and you think geez, wouldn't it be cool to be a wrestler or be Bobby Heenan or be Gorilla, And now with independent wrestling, especially here in Adelaide, it's so thriving, at the moment. You can.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when I found that out years ago, that blew me away. That
We'll get into that. We'll get into that.
Baby steps.
So let's talk. You talked about transitioning from Hulkamania into Bret Hart. That's a fairly hard transition of styles there. So was it an eye-opening kind of experience? Because Hulkamania did run wild, if you pardon the pun, for so long.
Oh yeah.
And that style is very much of its time. Yeah. And Bret's style is very different from just like punch me for 46 minutes and then I'll hulk up here later up and get out of here, brother.
I think I was always for the baby faces.
Yep.
So I guess that's what it was. He was the next bastion of integrity and all that is good in the world.
Yep.
And that's what I think really drew me as well to. Plus, when you're a kid, I mean, it's so easy to go for the folks that are already on top. You know what I mean? You want to join the bandwagon, so to speak, of the winning team.
Of course,
so if you're finding out at 9 years old that there's NBA basketball, the Chicago
Bulls
are a great team in 1993 to get
Michael Jordan, man. Michael Jordan.
He was the best.
He was.
So, and then of course later on when Dennis Rodman would be in WCW, that actually transitioned for me because I was such a Bulls fan. I was like, well, no, I'm going for the bad guys this time. You know what I mean?
So, was there a period that you went because I know we'll get into how this came about later, but you host the Butts and Seat podcast, which is WCW based. WCW or WWF? Which one won out ultimately, and did you make a switch at one point or another?
I was sort of watching both at a time around 96, 97, 98, that period where you could, like, the pay-per-view started really becoming available on Galaxy, Foxtel, cable, satellite TV back then. So a mate of ours would record the pay-per-views, and then within a couple of days, because he knew I was a wrestling fan, bang, here you go, here's the tape. So nice. I really started to catch up with what was happening in WCW around then, the NWO.
To say right at the right period to get into it as well. Wow.
And I think it was maybe like the month after NWO sort of formed was when I saw my first.
Perfect time, man. Wow.
And then you see people like Chris Jericho.
I was just about to say, you've got Jericho's rise.
I was such a Jericho mark. Because Jericho reminded me of a bit of Shawn Michaels. So he was like the WCW Shawn Michaels. So I could still get my fix of that style and that kind of charisma and attitude. You know, I could kind of get that over there. So that there was kind of WCW had different things at that time to WWF. The cruiserweights were more out there, and the crowds were different even.
Oh, very different.
The venues were lit a bit different. So there was it felt like having really two unique products at the time. Yeah. And then, of course, still getting the WWF VHS. So I was, right up until I'd say, Australians will remember this, back in the day around the 2000, 2001, as WCW was winding down, they'd have the truncated version of Nitro on. You're doing the eye roll already. They'd have the truncated version of Nitro, which the commentary was different and
everything was different. They'd splice the middle of the matches out, and you'd be like, what? They'd be like, well, headlock's not needed. Out you go.
You'd
like,
see,
what just happened?
You'd see Tony Schiavone at the desk, but then you've got two completely different people actually doing the commentary because they're trying to keep the context of that shortened show together. So they're not mentioning things that happened at the 90-minute mark of the actual broadcast, and then you're thinking, well, wait, I didn't see that. So that kind of threw me off a bit. I'm like, this looks a bit second rate, the way that it's coming off. I'm like, why can't I hear Tony? Yeah, he's meant to be your voice of your company. Exactly, and he's the voice I was used to. There was the warm and fuzzies there, you know. So I kind of, that's when I started to realise WCW is not what it used to be. But I go over and rent my WWF pay-per-views, and they're still giving me what I want.
Still got JR yelling at you.
I've still got JR, and I'm still. It's still just keeping my attention from start to finish. Yep. So ultimately, I guess yes, and in the real world, WWF did win out. Yep. But as we're documenting on the Butts and Seats podcast, even around mid-98, it's like, boy, there are some big mistakes being made by this company, and how they actually survived another couple of years is actually baffling in itself looking back.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know you and I both read the book, The Death of WCW.
Yep.
And it's so remarkable how a company can have so much going for it and just not understand any way how to book the right way. And then when the tide turns, push harder against it.
Yep. Well, you look at that mid-98 period and the NWO is really what the show's all about, whether it's black and white or red and black.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the WCW side, which if we're looking at them as a team, you've got Goldberg and DDP and Booker T on the rise, but nothing really happened with Booker until a couple of years down the track when it was really out of necessity.
Yeah, exactly.
Who else is over? Okay, let's put him in that spot. So there were just a lot of mistakes being made that could have been rectified simply by elevating more of those non-NWO characters, but they were so tunnel vision.
You look at the Jericho and the Radicals is the perfect example. If you take these wrestlers who are just at the gate perfect, and if all you're doing is looking at them going, nah, it's your mistake. Because Jericho has gone on to prove, you can drink it in, man. You can build a company around the guy, and he'll grow and adapt.
Yeah.
So whatever they could have thrown at him, he would have grown and adapted with it. But instead, they wanted to go, no, shut up.
Yeah.
You know.
And Jericho has proven himself, especially over the last decade or few years, to even as a heel, he'll reinvent these tiny little things about himself, but he's still essentially the same douchebag character.
Yeah. He's the Madonna of wrestling, where he's the same core, but he just... actually, more Lady Gaga, because I never really wanted to punch Madonna. This time I want to punch Lady Gaga. So I figured Jericho's more the lady. I could see Jericho coming out in a suit made of meat. Anyway, moving on from that. So, around 13 or 14, you know, the magic starts to wear off and you start to go, okay, this is a bit of a work. So what happens then? You clearly evolve, and then you start thinking, I want to do something in this with my life. When you start to realise it, you know, it's a possibility.
At that point, it was never even a thought, because I was still unaware of independent wrestling in Australia.
Radio, yep.
You know, so there were like the odd shows around South Australia back then, but I didn't know about them. You know, and especially Beyond the Map, which came out, the documentary that came out around, what was it, 99?
98, 99, I think it was,
And that was the final sort of blow as far as, not killing wrestling for me, but just the idea of, like, okay, this is how they put things together.
Yeah.
This is the real life behind the characters, behind the screens. And so, it was, of course, around that time, a lot of folks do get, or especially back then, around 16, 17, as WCW faded off, you kind of lose interest in wrestling a bit. Mm-hmm. And I've found with a lot of guests I've had on Wrestle Radio Australia that around my age, that was the case. They sort of had that same cooling off period, and then it's still in you. It's still in your blood. It's still, the DNA's still there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And sure enough, the interest comes back several years later. And then that's when I found out about wrestling in Australia. So around 2006, saw an ad in the paper for EPW Adelaide, which is now Wrestle Rampage.
Yep.
And I was like, the guys look pretty well put together. This must be fair income pro wrestling. Let's go. So I took the missus down there, and I was like, I'm coming back. I need more of this. Like, it was, the days of, I mean, Damien Slater and Jag and Jason Cooper and people like Mikey Nichols, who's now Nick Miller in NXT. You've got Carlo Cannon, who was just starting out at that time. He'd just come back from Lance
Storm's Academy. Yep.
So he was like fresh.
I remember he's doing popping and jiving. And
oh man.
Shit, man!
I remember one match between him and J-Rock, Mr. Jonah Rock.
I think I know the match you're about to bring up. Yes.
And all of a sudden, the beat drops a couple of minutes into the match, and there's a dance battle between Carlo Cannon, Cash Money. I don't know if he was actually called Cash Money at the time, but Carlo Cannon and Jonah Rock.
I remember that.
And of course, Carlo's out there looking all smooth, the ladies' man. He's popping and locking, and he's jiving, and he's getting down, and then of course, Jonah's just got like half a spinneroonie, the whole like, let's make the heel look silly, and it was a good laugh. So folks like that, Spike Steele, who you might hear a lot of Aussie wrestlers talk about back in the day, not an imposing figure as far as his stature, but the way that he would wrestle, the way that his character was so believable that like I believe this guy was a head case. That he was nuts.
Yep.
But then he'd go in there with Damian Slater and have this tech battle.
Yeah, I was going to say these amazing matches.
But at the end of it, I just had to like yell at him and say, "That was awesome. You're a great wrestler." And he sort of gave me that look of like, okay,
yeah.
I'm not meant to hear that at the moment, but fair enough, thank you. Like, and move on. So that got my attention as far as like, wow, there's wrestling in Australia.
Yep.
It's good. And it's a top night out as well. That was the big kicker for me. Is me and the missus can go and have fun, and I can enjoy the wrestling. She can enjoy the guys, with their shirts off and their muscles, and have a few brewskis. And as a fan, it was great. And then a couple of years later, I found out about Riot City Wrestling, and here we are.
Let's talk about that. So you start off the independents. So you go to the independents. Who's the wrestler? We all have that one wrestler. When we started the independents, when we go back to the independents, they get you hooked. For me, initially, it was Slater. Slater was my man. When I first started watching, I was like,
yeah.
Anytime I saw him on a card, I was like, just here's my money, I'm there.
I wanted to cheer Damian Slater until I was red in the face.
Yeah.
And I wanted to yell at Jag until I was blue in the face. So they were the two that got me, as the bad guy.
Yep.
And the golden boy.
Yep.
It was, at the time, as a wrestling fan getting into it, it was the perfect thing to hook me, the perfect characters, the perfect everything.
Completely agree.
It was just
Yep.
And I was still watching those two, like the other night at AWA, Australian Wrestling Allstars. They tore it up.
Even backstage, like I was going in and out of the interview room, and just occasionally it'd be in the interview room and it'd be like, stop, because the crowd would be popping so loud, be like, I know this is an independent mic, but I still picked it up. Stop, we have to start again.
Yep.
Like, say, stop being so entertaining, you sons of bitches.
I know, right?
So yeah, no, it's just they really do just tear it down. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So Jag and Slater get you hooked on EPW at the time.
And the Graham brothers, I must say, back then as the young underdogs.
I remember the Graham brothers.
The Grahams was so much fun to get behind,
Yep.
who later became the Hot Rods, and there's various sort of incarnations of the Graham brothers over time, but yeah, they were really cool to sort of get behind. I just wanted to see them win,
Yeah,
and that's always a good hook to have that underdog that you just want to see get up, But that's one very important thing, the way that they were structured back then, is that like they were the underdogs, but they were still the lower to mid card sort of guys,
Yep.
and then sort of build them up that way. There's nothing worse, I think, than when you've got a main eventer who you're going, all right, well, let's try the underdog route.
Yeah, no.
And it's like, after a while, so much losing.
Yeah.
Matches. I don't care what anyone says out there. I'm sorry to all the bookers out there. You're going to hate this. But
Here we go. It's a hot take.
wins, as far as I'm concerned, wins and losses
Matter.
Now, they may not matter to the... Like, if I'm a wrestler, I don't care. Like, I don't care if I go out there and win or lose. I'm getting booked. But the perception of the fan...
To the the character.
Exactly
to that
right.
character, it matters. That's,
It's a big deal that I think a lot of folks dip into the WWE method of like, it's a subliminal sort of thing of that's what we see, that's what we're used to, that's what fans watch, therefore let's go with that. But sometimes it's like, no, let's give this guy a few wins in a row, or this girl a few wins in a row, and just see if the fans actually really
there's
genuinely
a streak behind them.
and genuinely take to them as...
Yeah, you need that. You need that person who, okay, you've got your despicable heel. You need to have that baby face that you're building up on a hot streak, but keep them as far away from each other as possible until that inevitable moment when they hit. And then when the heel goes over them that first time by dodgy or by cheating or something, just have a dirty victory.
And as a fan, you know that our boy had the win.
And you sit there and you're like, and you ask him, fuck you son of a bitch. And you want that guy's blood. That rematch has even more people and even more money, and when that guy does win, when your babyface finally wins that comeuppance story, you've made a megastar equal to your heel. So now you have 2 stars you can book your company around instead of just one.
I think the Daniel Bryan storyline and the way that played out kind of had a lot of folks thinking, well, we can just do this with anybody.
No.
You
You've
can't.
gotta have
Daniel
the right
Bryan
person.
it worked
One
with
of a
him
kind.
because he was Daniel Bryan, a genuinely likable person.
Yep.
Not just the character, not just the wrestler, not just even the wrestling character, but the backstage character. The Daniel Bryan, right?
He's just a humble human being.
Was a 1 in a million
Yeah.
case, and you just can't beat dudes left, right, and centre
Yeah, no.
like you did with him. And we all could have been worked for 2.5 to 3 years.
Oh yeah.
And that could have been the plan all. Who knows? You never know because it's WWE.
It's Vince. Vince is crazy. So.
Exactly right. But
Yeah, it's like you talk about with eating losses. There's only one wrestler ever in history who you could book to lose, and that was Shawn. Shawn was the only one who you could lose for 3 years straight, and people are stupid like, doesn't matter, Shawn.
it's HBK.
You know, he
Yeah.
gives a shit. I get to see a HBK match.
Especially when Triple H had his fun around 2003.
Oh, yeah.
But, 2002. But
Oh, one of my favourite. That literally my favourite match is that SummerSlam Triple H HBK return match. That is still my favourite match of all time.
it's so easy to get sucked in.
It's just so believable. The ending as well with Triple H, just taking it all back with the sledgehammer. I was ready to kill him. You paid me back to 2000, Triple H. Anyway, all right. So let's move on from that.
Tangents.
So,
This is going to happen, folks. Tangents left, right, and centre.
This is how it goes down.
This is how it happens on WRA all the time.
So you go to RCW at some point from EPW.
Yep.
So do you remember your first RCW show? Do you remember the first guy who sucked you in?
I
Let's
do
talk about
remember the first show. It was one of those
Nice.
things again where at the time the wifey was sort of getting into wrestling with me because it was my passion.
Yep.
Now she hates
that.
wrestling because she's just had enough of it. She's sick of it. But the first show was actually at a little YMCA hall in Carradinga here in South Australia, and we saw this other company, RCW. All right, it's more wrestling. Great, let's go have a look. And Mimic Chris Basso, of course, who was I guess he's how I got my foot in the door really with Riot City originally. He was on the card. He was in was he in the main event? I'm not sure, but he was on the
main or
card.
semi-main.
Yeah, he was still
He's always been a main event.
He was still one of the big. Even early on, he was still one of the big names there, and I think it was, of course, when he had the face paint.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I remember the face paint, the long
The dreads. Oh my gosh, the
God, I remember that
storied
character.
dreads of Mimic. At the end of that night, the main event was Damon Matthews, who was the champion at the time, I think, versus Voodoo, Andy Roy.
Yep.
And the stipulation was a bit ECW-ish in that if Voodoo lost, he'd have to take 10 cane shots. Or
I remember
a
that.
succession of cane shots.
Yeah, I remember that stip.
And
I don't think I saw the match, but I remember reading about the stip because I used to troll online to read about local stuff. Anyways.
And sure enough, David Matthews won, and so Voodoo was getting the hell caned out of him, and he was his wrists taped to the top
What I
rope.
remember hearing was people were like, "This was unreal." He just got
Yeah.
shit knocked out of him.
And he voluntarily did it because he lost the match. That was the stipulation. Voodoo was the baby face. He's like, well, I got no choice.
Yeah.
And he took these cane shots, and it was to this day one of the most brutal things I've seen in a wrestling ring. Just because of the fact that he had nowhere to go, he could belt the shit out of him all night if he wanted to. What the heck?
Yeah.
Like
he tied himself up voluntarily.
So after about 3 or 4 shots, hard cane shots to the back, it was getting uncomfortable, but it was just the right amount of uncomfortable, you know? And after that match, I was just like, wow, that guy's a tough son of a bitch. So I bought Voodoo's keychain, which he enjoyed hearing years later. He got a bit of a giggle out of that, but yeah, that was my first experience with Riot City Wrestling, and I was just like, and also they had women's wrestling. Savannah Summers wrestled Sarah J on that show, so that was also
good women's wrestling as well.
Yeah,
Let's clarify that. Good women's wrestling.
It was, and that was something that Wrestle Rampage or EPW at the time did not have. Yeah. So that was a little hook that, okay, well, RCW have the women's wrestling too, and they've got a lot of guys who are doing a bit more high flying and cane shots. I'm like,
yeah, definitely.
This is insane. So I think I saw my next RCW show maybe a year later or a few months later, and still was going to the EPW shows, and then I started working my day job at the time. I was like, this is where I'm like really back into wrestling. Like I'm really hooked again now. Like I was when I was a kid, but it's worse because there's more content out there to discover and catch up on, you see?
Oh, I know.
So I'm doing the full on catching up on 5-6 years worth of stuff in the matter of 12 months. Bang.
Wow.
Renting any DVD I can. I was hooked again. And
Once it gets you, man, it gets
oh, dude. And then I was working with a fella who we were talking about wrestling, and he said, "Oh, I used to wrestle in high school." And I'm thinking, "You mean like the Greco-Roman?" So it's like, no, I used to wrestle with these guys who, do you know, Cree? Like Cree. Who's Cree? That's an interesting name, Cree.
That's what I thought the first time I heard it.
Yeah.
Like, who the hell is Matt talking about Cree?
And long story short, he was talking about Chris Basso, who he'd went to high school with, and they'd put on these shows at lunchtime in the gym. It was full on like the Hardy, like the Hardy Boys kind of story, you know, of these two brothers who love wrestling so much they'll do whatever they can to get started, you know, to have a match, to put on the character for people, so they had that going on back then, and this fella Angelo introduced me to Chris, and I went to a couple more RC Dub shows, and then I was like, alright, I suppose I'm going to try out. I'm going to lose a heap of weight. I've been big since I was a little kid, and got gallstones, and because of that I had no choice but to basically eat healthy, lose weight. So I lost a ton of weight in a few months, and then I was like, well, if there's any better excuse to get my ass into a gym and properly get fit and healthy, wrestling tryout. This is going to be my goal as far as working out goes, to get to a level where I think I can try out and do things physically in the ring. So I've always been a big wuss when it comes to doing anything daredevilish, you know, so I'd be afraid to climb monkey bars when I was a kid, so I don't know what I thought, you know, I was that kid, right? So played C-grade footy 5 games, I was no good, hated getting hit, hated getting knocked around.
No, them feelings, man.
Stuff that. So yeah, then I ended up doing the tryout after about 6 months of working out, and you think when you're setting your own pace, working out...
Oh, you think you're a dominant beast and...
Or not even that, it was just like, I'm at a competent fitness level where I can handle these things. And of course you rock up on tryout day...
You're dead within 5 minutes.
Different story. Once somebody else is setting the pace for you...
Let's talk about that. So your tryout day.
Yep.
Alright, so you got gym bag, I'm guessing? You roll in? Or just roll in ready to go? You're like, I don't even need a bag, bottle of water, fuck it, let's go.
Funny this, because I guess... Not to say that people were bigoted or anything like that.
Yeah.
But you're walking into quite what is known as a man's world, the pro wrestling game. Especially more back then than it is now, with more and more females getting into it, and it's more of a, there isn't that vibe of macho. Yeah, it's really not around anymore, which I think is awesome because it makes people feel so much more comfortable when they're.
Which is sure, it's an entertainment thing now, as opposed to in a respectful way. It was for a lot of time a dick measuring contest of how hard can I get hit in the head with a chair and how many fucking staples can I take, and it's like, okay.
Or how hard can I rip this guy until he just crumbles and leaves because he doesn't like being picked on. Oh yeah, there was a lot of that from certain people.
I'm glad that's gone, because it doesn't breed the entertainers who get into these sort of sports are generally people who are doing it to get over something that's happened in their past, and this is their confidence.
Escapism. Yeah.
And so you go in there and you get that shit, and you do go, man, I had enough of this shit before I got here. I don't even know what it is. So I can't even. But anyway, so you turn up for tryout.
So I rock up, and of course I was wearing basketball shorts and sneakers or whatever, but I'm wearing a purple singlet. And of course, I'm wearing my, we'll show it off now, may rest in peace, the Prince symbol.
Nice.
So I've rocked up with my purple beater and Prince symbol. Guys are like, okay, who's this guy? What's his deal? You know what I mean?
Gonna make us some pancakes after.
Anybody want grape? And so... Of course, months later I found out they were joking about, like, oh, this guy with the Prince symbol and the purple beater, are like, what's his deal, you know what I mean? And of course, within about maybe 10 minutes of cardio,
dead.
I puked.
Yep, nice.
But I got back in there, And that's
respect.
That's the key. But that's the key, I think, is even if you do, for any folks out there that are trying out young and worried about that big day, if you do push through that and you at least show the passion and the respect for your trainers and for the environment and for where you are and for what you are doing, that goes a long way.
Respect is the most important thing I've found in this business.
Yeah, and even a couple of years after that tryout session, the only two folks left that were around from that group were myself, who's
Still
ring
here.
announcer, commentator, and El Presidente, who was the manager of the Rude Ones for some time. Good old Prez. So, and we were probably, the two least fit,
Least likely to succeed.
least coordinated people there. But we had this passion for wrestling. And, I did my training for about 12 odd months, and I'd have those little mental blocks where I can do a left military roll, which is where you go sort of over like that. You say take like an arm drag or something. I could take that just fine. But ask me to do a military roll on the right side, and
Your brain just couldn't do it.
yeah, there was just these weird little things like that. Back rolls I could do just fine. A forward roll, I'd go to one side. So these weird little things that it turns out in the end we're all just mental. Again, it's that thing of I don't want to break my neck.
Yeah.
Probably not going to break your neck on a roll, but it's mental. So after, even Freddie Fusion would be there before training actually started, and he'd be like, right, Armour, we're going to nail these rolls. Let's do this. And even he had that look on his face like, my God, why can't he just do it? You know what I mean? It's the most
Why
basic.
won't you learn?
Oh, I felt so bad for the guy, but he was so intent on like, no, I'm going to bloody get this guy to do it.
Yep.
So, after about 12 months, we were at the RCW Awards night. And I went up to Big Grim, and a bit of Dutch courage on the night doesn't hurt, but I kind of went up to him and said, hey, look, this is the score. I know I'm shit in the ring. I know I'm not going to be at a standard where I would pay to watch myself wrestle. It's a big thing for me. If it's if it's not worth a paying customer seeing, look at your game, look at your show, look at your production. Get with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, people are paying their money.
That's exactly it.
And if they're a big wrestling fan, it might be the last $20 in their wallet. They're coming to see you. Make sure you're putting on a bloody good show,
Exactly.
So I was like, this isn't going to
They'll
happen.
keep spending that $20
Exactly
in the future.
right. Exactly right. You want them to come back. So I just said, look, that's it. I can
Hanging up the boots.
I'm comfortable with the mic, so we'll stick with that.
Yep.
And the way that came about, commentating, was the Mega Slam event of 2010, which was the Strength Cup tournament. But at the time, it was stretched out over 3 nights, which is tough to draw 3 nights in a row. It's tough to draw, one night in Adelaide when there's footy on or there's the Fringe on, especially in March. Yeah, like at the moment it's the Royal Show season in Adelaide. That was my first event where basically one of the announcers for the 3rd night had pulled out, but they couldn't be there. And Chris Basso came up to me and said, we need a commentator, we need a ring announcer. Do you want to do it? Stupid question. I'm there. I have a suit.
Shut up and take my money.
I have a suit. I'm there. So that was it. That was my first event was Mega Slam Night 3, 2010, commentating with Luke Santamaria, and I thought I need a little catchphrase. I need a little something here to
Bit of spice.
something to make this mine. I thought, well, if I'm gonna stamp my foot into this role, I really got to have something that is unique. And of course, watching a lot of WCW back in the day, and Michael Buffer. Well, we can't use Ready to Rumble because it's likely to sue our asses if we actually do. Yes, folks, that's legit. Michael Buffer owns the slogan, Ready to Rumble. Amazing. So
It's a lot of money off it as well.
yes, he does. So I thought, well, it's Riot City. Are you ready to riot? Sounds pretty good. Alright, we'll go with that. And so that was my first
Still works to this day.
Oh, doesn't it just? That is
day.
the best part of my gig. Like the thing that I love the most, is hyping that crowd, especially before a show, and then doing those big main event intros, making that moment, trying to make that moment feel even more important than the wrestlers or the bookers or than they've actually sort of laid out. You know what I mean? If I can add that
cherry on the top.
That's it. If I can add that, just that little bit of, and put that fire under the fans as well. Of like,
definitely.
let's get into this. Let's get hype. Let's make some noise. You know, I love that. I think that if you've got a great card and you've got great talent, you've got great production, an MC going out there at the start of the show and really bringing some energy, because that's the first thing that the folks see and hear, is myself, Sean Fuster, or Wolf Dog, or Paul Roberts, whoever it is, and Luke Hazard, and that's like I don't know, I've just got a big thing about that. If you're the first impression of a wrestling company to somebody, bring it. You know what I mean? Bring not just the professionalism, but bring that energy from the get. It really does help. I find.
Absolutely.
So, and I just noticed that from shows that I've been going to as well.
Yeah.
You know, where you think like, geez, I wish there was a bit more of an oomph here to kick it
to
off. Yeah, and I find it's just so enjoyable. I love getting people up out of their seat or making noise or
Absolutely.
making people feel excited. It's great.
You do a good job of it.
Thanks. I try.
I've got time for one last question before we get into the plugs and the wrap-ups.
Yeah.
How'd you get involved with AWA and with Steven Spee and the whole production there?
Well, with Australian Wrestling All-Stars, it was just a matter of, I guess, needing somebody in Adelaide that was, I guess, familiar with the role, familiar with commentary, familiar with announcing, and having a pretty good relationship with Rocky Monero off-screen. I don't know about on-screen at the moment with how he's going about things down there at the Denison Centre, September 17th. Get your tickets.
Boom.
There it is.
Well done on that one.
Got to throw the plugs in where I can. We sort of had developed a good relationship behind the scenes. He's been on WRA, Wrestle Radio Australia, a couple of times. And yeah, it was just really sort of cool to like Steve's a great bloke as well, the owner of AWA. He's a really good bloke who just wants like the best, just wants the talent to be able to go out there and sort of do their best job and do what they know they can do. It's sort of that thing of it's really cool because there's not much like the micromanagement. You know what I mean?
He has a lot of trust in the people he puts in.
Oh yeah, and he and Rocky have I guess an idea of what they want to do and how they want the show to pan out. But it's the minor details that they give you and then letting you fill in the rest as a performer. It's really cool. And it's really been cool to see people like Matt Hayter, who I hadn't seen much of in the past, really going out there putting on some good matches.
Balls to the wall in the last couple of weeks.
Doesn't he? Yeah. Spaceman from the Bullet Clip, who I'd never seen before, he can absolutely go. And he's built too.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of those guys
that
where
boy's
you look
got a
at,
bit of a future of him.
oh, you look at him and you go like, he's a wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get in his way.
Yeah.
And then of course Maniac, Coyote and those guys go to that
Maniac is literally a cartoon character come to life.
Isn't he?
He's something else, that guy.
I mean, I remember the Wrestle Rampage shows back in the day when I started watching indie wrestling locally, and he'd sort of come out, it was about maybe the second or third show, and the bad guys were beating down the good guys, and then all of a sudden out comes this big chucked up bastard Maniac, and it was just like, what?
This guy? Yeah.
Like, who the hell is this? But he's saving the good guys. Yeah, go Wayne, you know. And now I guess the character is kind of, it's a bit different with the Bullet Clip.
He's evolved as
attitude. Well. Yeah, exactly right. Same with Coyote.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's kind of found a new fire, a new passion, I guess. You know.
Given Blakestone as well has got a nice new fire and a lease of life on him with the Bullet. It seems to really charge the guys up.
Yeah, like Steve unfortunately did cop the chokeslam the other night, but it's just been really cool at Australian Wrestling All-Stars just to have people from all these different promotions and different cities around Oz coming together and just having a great time putting on a good show.
Yep.
You know, and meeting people like yourself and Adriana and the whole Cabana crew. Like, you guys are rad at what you do.
I appreciate that.
And that I can't wait to see all the video of Australian Wrestling All-Stars once this little series has wrapped up. it's going to be really cool to look back on it, and see what we've all done out there.
Special, yeah.
Yeah, and no matter what the future is of Australian Wrestling All-Stars, whether we see more in 2017 or not, it's just been really cool to be a part of it.
Steve can be very proud of what he's accomplished with it.
Totally.
All right, well, here's the thing. I'm going to call this the end of part 1 for now, because we've still got a lot of things to talk about, so part 2 will be coming in the future weeks.
Awesome.
But in the meantime, Riot City, what's happening there? Give us a bit of info about what's coming up.
All right, well, I'm not sure when folks are going to be seeing this, but of course this weekend, September 10th, we've got the Riot City Rumble at the Latvian Hall in Wayville, South Australia. We've got the tag team tournament still continuing. We've got the women's title on the line, and also the Riot City Rumble match itself. And if you can't be there in person, check us out on Vimeo. Just search Riot City Wrestling, and you'll be able to buy the show there in the near future. It's usually about a month or so before they come out online. So you can order it there for just $6. You can enjoy the full show, stream it or download it. And also we've got events coming up over the next few months. The Key to the City's coming up, which is the big ladder match. That's always interesting.
Always a treat, that one.
Oh, because they just go out there, these guys, and do some crazy stuff to get that key
on the line.
And of course, the Key to the City, if you get a hold of the key, you can unlock a title shot whenever, wherever, for up to 12 months. Which I know sounds like a very familiar stipulation, but so riotcitywrestling.com, and of course check us out on Facebook. We have not just the big events at the Latvian Hall with our full-blown production, I'm not just saying it because I'm part of RCW, but the best live production you will see anywhere in Oz is at Riot City Wrestling. We have those big events at Latvian Hall. We also have these smaller RCW live events which are held at our academy at Hindmarsh here in SA, which really gives a lot of the younger wrestlers a chance to sort of find their feet, get a few matches under their belt, feel what it's like to wrestle in front of a crowd of people, and then, with those, I guess, showings there, they can prove themselves to get onto one of our main cards. Absolutely. So the RCW live events are quite intimate. Ticket prices are about half price, but we only fit about 100 odd people in there because it is our training facility, and it's kind of small. It is intimate. That's one thing I'm really proud of with Riot City, is that we try and give back to the fans as much as they give us, the energy and the love and the support that they give us, and that's what makes, I think, Riot City really a special company, a special wrestling company and family. Yeah. Not just, all right, we're putting on a show, you pay your money and we'll see you next month. It's not like that. Yeah, and that's what I love about RCW. It's good.
Aside from that, we can catch you on WRA.
That's right.
Seamless. They'll never know.
Know what?
Exactly.
Yes, Wrestle Radio Australia, which I must thank Chris Basso for planting the seed several years ago, saying, hey, you should do a podcast, man, about wrestling. We always used to be driving around listening to Colt Cabana and DCW podcasts back in the day and be like, you should do one. I was like, how do I do it? And then, of course, a few years later, WrestleHustle.com came about. Marek, who runs the site, said, hey, let's
get on it.
You want to do a podcast for us? Okay, don't know how. And now, 3.5 years later, we've got better audio gear, and I know what I'm doing with production so that the show sounds a bit better. And we've had a who's who of wrestlers from around Australia, and the world, even the world. Adam Pearce, who's now a producer at NXT, has been on the show twice when he was down here for RC Jeff Jarrett spoke to Todd Eastman a couple of years back. We've had people like Rove McManus, who's a mad wrestling fan.
He loves it.
We had him on for an hour just talking about wrestling. So that was awesome. And then, just so many great wrestlers from around the country, whether they're from EPW Perth, Davis Storm, ring announcer Dean Olsen, who's a top bloke, Damien Slater, Jag, the Bassos, heap of names from Riot City, Melbourne City Wrestling, Queensland. Todd Eastman now lives in Queensland, and he's catching up with a lot of the wrestlers up there. In AWA Live and Pacific Pro. You know what? There are a lot of talented wrestlers up there, and it's just a matter of them sort of, it's that fine-tuning. And even Todd spoke of it with the talent he said. It's just that fine-tuning. And once they have that little bit of fine-tuning, it's amazing, you know, the steps that they could take
Yeah.
up there in Queensland. So all around the country, wrestlers from all around the country, we've had them on Wrestle Radio Australia. You can find that on fnx.network. Just the plug, the visual plug. fnx.network, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio. But if you do, I must please ask, if you do listen to an episode and you enjoy the podcast, please share it around. If you know wrestling fans, or you know people that are into the wrestling scene in Australia, the industry, sorry, not scene, it is a business, respect the business. If you do know people that are into it, please do share it with them, because you know, Stone Cold, JR, Chris Jericho, they've got enough publicity.
Yeah.
They've got enough
I think they
downloads.
got some heat behind them, those boys.
Plenty of hits for those lads.
Yes.
So we'd love to get the Australian wrestlers out there more, and we can help tell their stories. They come on and tell their stories. We have a laugh. Sometimes it does get a little bit vulgar, like it does on Butts in Seats, but not too much.
It's wrestlers. You got to expect to have frank humour amongst wrestlers.
Yeah, I just wouldn't have it on the car with the kiddies in there, because you might hear a few F-bombs being dropped, but that's my big passion at the moment, besides RCW, is Wrestle Radio Australia.
Yeah.
And I love what you're doing here, you guys are doing with A Word with Adam, because it's more positive publicity.
That's what we're trying to do.
For
talent. And feed wrestling here.
That's
that
it.
people still don't know that we have it here.
Mate, it's amazing how many people you run into, and you mention, oh, I work for a wrestling company here in Adelaide. Oh, what would it be like WWE? We have that. Yeah, mate, it's bloody good. Come and check it out. You know,
exactly.
It's where the action is. Hashtag where the action is. Wrestle Radio Australia.
Well, on that note, Josh, thank you very much, and soon part 2 will come.
Oh, looking forward to it, mate.
All right, we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. I've been Adam Gerard. He's been Josh Armour. We'll see you next time.
Peace.